Welcome to part 3 of our EduCities webinar. In part 1, we have discussed the Connect project and the Connected Learning platform. In part 2, we looked at some of the themes and we looked at the role of the facilitator, the important role of the facilitator in ensuring the participants and the learners are able to maximize their engagement within the platform and within the project. In part 3, we now look to some practical aspects associated with the platform. And in this case, we will look to the Dublin Learning Cities platform. And we look to the idea of how we might create a group. Once we have registered as a user within the platform, we will then notice on our main dashboard, we will see that we have an opportunity to click on the community option. Once we click inside that option, we have the opportunity to create a group. In order to create a group, we must complete a number of specific details, such as the group name, whether we want certain settings associated with that group, such as a forum. We can add specific documents, some photos and cover images. And then, importantly, we can look within the network of members on the platform who we may want to invite to work with us within the group. Once we have created the group and continued, we are ready to start a discussion within this group and enjoy the exchanges that flow. Within the Dublin Connect platform, an active group looks at the area of restorative practice, and within that, how different community members can come together to look at new ways of engaging and challenging certain aspects of bringing a restorative approach to community and youth development in their area. So what does that involve? So within restorative practice in the community, it looks specifically at how do we build social capital through participatory learning and decision making. Restorative practice has emerged from a way of understanding restorative justice where responses to crime and wrongdoing within the community has happened after it has occurred. Restorative practice is a proactive approach, and within communities, informal and formal processes have been used to proactively build relationships and a sense of community. This has been proven as an effective means to create social capital, to build relationships, and through this to prevent potential conflict. Restorative practices, as they are applied within organizations, within youth programs, within academic circles, and within corporate worlds, they have been proven to actively develop good relationships between colleagues, between professionals, between young people, between managers. When they have been applied effectively, they have been demonstrated to prevent escalation of conflict. And when conflict or when a breakdown in communication occurs, by employing restorative practices, it allows for these types of disturbances to be handled in a creative and healthy manner. Restorative practice emerged as a means of bringing people together to focus on how they may build and repair relationships. Initially, the focus was on the justice system and issues to do with mediation or reconciliation. In recent years, restorative practice has developed as a specific methodology that has become embedded in youth work, community work, volunteering, and as an approach where we have been working on the Dublin connected platform in Dublin's north inner city, restorative practices as a methodology and as a set of approaches have had their own journey. When we introduce the restorative practice techniques, what we see is that staff morale improves, relationships improve, both between the users of a service, such as young people within a youth service, community members within a community service, students within an academic setting, and likewise between service providers who are working together. Relationships improve. Conflict is reduced within the workplace. Disciplinary incidents within schools, within services are reduced. And in turn, we see reductions in reoffending patterns. So how does it work? And why should we use restorative practice? These are questions that have been floated and debated within our connected learning platform, within the many groups as linked to this area. People ask, well, how do we apply it? What techniques, what tips? Do we have examples where these approaches are working? And what we find and what we see is that within organizations that have demonstrated the embedding and the use of restorative practice, that people take responsibility for their actions, people develop emotional literacy, empathy increases between managers, between service users, between staff. People then become more confident in dealing with day-to-day aspects of conflict, and in turn it reduces the potential for an escalation in these types of conflicts. Furthermore, it improves well-being and reduces stress. Within the groups on our connected learning platform, community members, volunteers, young people, youth workers, professionals, all based and active within Dublin's north inner city, have shown and demonstrated and have discussed at length that how in using restorative practice processes and by bringing them into our practices, we see that we can build trust, understanding, and mutual respect. We encourage empathy and engagement between different aspects and elements within our organizations. We find a sense of responsibility and accountability is promoted not just by managers or leaders, but from the ground up, from the young people themselves. They find that they have been given a voice and that this approach allows them to make use of it. Where there is a focus on solutions, when community members and youth workers and young people come together, they are encouraged and empowered to look at how can we move on from certain challenges rather than dwelling on them. And key to the whole approach is that we preempt conflict and we preempt difficulties that we may often have seen in the past. It was through these discussions and through these connections that were built within the platform that we dedicated and the groups emerged specifically looking at this key aspect of engagement within the Dublin's North Inner City. And when the various community members and volunteers came together, they saw that the key need that they were seeking to identify within their platform was looking at how do we build restorative communities. And the platform allowed a network to evolve that looked specifically at these very themes, these very issues, looking at these methodologies and looking at how do we share these practices. So as a facilitator, when we are using these restorative practice approaches, what methods and tips and ideas can we have to facilitate our learners and our participants, but within the platform, and that they can take the learning into their lives and into their professional capacities. So how do we develop the learner interest? We need to encourage curiosity and exploration. We take the initiative to learn about and support diverse learner interests to better understand their priorities and values. We make a conscious effort to connect learners to other organisations that might deepen their interest. Within these learning spaces, we support skill development through learning pathways, course sequences, peer mentoring, and leadership opportunities. We must be led by these learners. How do we do this? We employ activities that have no right answer. Creative activities linked to storytelling can allow our learners to express themselves in the production of a project. We can establish a learner council and incorporate the input in programmatic and strategic decisions that shows our commitment to their input. We actively must look for places to compromise and explain how decisions are taken. We can use technology for creative production and expression. If our learners are new to technology, we must make sure to bridge from the familiar to the unknown. Let the digital tools bring a concept to life only when it has been started in a mode or medium that the learner is comfortable with. Use the digital technologies to create projects that can be worked on in person and online, individually or collaboratively. We must think about the potential audience for the learner's work. Online tools and forums can enable low-barrier ways to produce or share original output, such as designs, tracks, text, art, or performances. We need to cultivate peer relationships. We can encourage collaboration based on shared interests and skills instead of established social circles. When a member of our group is asking for help, allow the peers to have a chance to volunteer their own knowledge and expertise. When assigning group projects, provide support for online collaboration where the learners can share their work. Talking openly about interests is one way to cultivate trust and build a relationship. Dedicating time to learning and listening to your learners can also model the importance of peer-to-peer learning. We must create a safe space. Treating learners with respect, giving them space to express their emotions without judgment, and really listening to them are most likely to help them feel safe and supported within a restorative space. Ask your learners what they need from you to feel more comfortable and be willing to make those changes. It's easier to broker an entry point for them if you know what they like and how they learn best. Your learners will learn in many different ways. Enable multiple ways that they can contribute, yet be willing to let your learners observe while they get more comfortable. Balancing the tension between wanting someone to participate and wanting to give them space to join in is challenging, but it can build trust. Work openly and with shared purpose. Online communities can be important parts of your learner groups. Allow some external sharing. An end-of-course showcase can be held for an authentic audience of friends, family, trainers, policymakers and the community, inspiring lifelong civic engagement. When cultivating shared purpose, it can be helpful to have a collaborative project or event to encourage the learners to work toward a shared goal, allowing them to set and revise group goals. Translate learned skills. Often our learners don't have the language they need to translate what they have learned into other settings. Give them the language they can use on a CV or when talking about their skills with others. If one of your learners is particularly taken by a topic or skill, invite potential mentors or professionals to illustrate how an interest might translate into a potential pathway. One of your learners may have a specific interest in a sport. Let them connect with a coach that may be also active within the community. Let them build their interests in a shared way. Be transparent about your own career journey, your struggles and your successes. Be sure to consider the ways in which your privilege might have reduced barriers for you. Broaden contexts for learning. Examine whether awarding digital badges to recognize individual skills can be used meaningfully to communicate a connected pathway of learning experiences. This may be simple within the connected learning platform, but work with the group to see how this can become meaningful. Support civic engagement through online communities and digital activism, helping your learners to use their voices to affect issues they care about. Within Dublin's North Inner City, our connected learning platform participants were able to look at how they can build a more restorative community through coming together on a regular basis and looking at raising their voice. They were able to have wins in relation to specific elements of building a more engaging community. Create opportunities for collaborations. Investigate how you can give credits and support for your learners' work outside of the specific project-based activities. Build collaboration among educators, community-based organisations and family networks to better connect learners to existing opportunities. Cultivate relationships with people within other learning spaces and other interest areas. Invite these partners to co-lead a session with you or come to meet your learners as a way to help them make new connections. So in looking to develop learner interests, and building supportive relationships within that learning culture, and in connecting to future opportunities. As a facilitator, you are building connections, you are fostering interests, and you are ensuring that the learning pathways are connected within their community setting. These are key elements to ensure success within the connected learning platforms. Thank you for participating within this webinar, and thank you for attending within our program.